of some of that chemistry that came about from us being so open with these people, and them in turn giving us back their truths, I guess, which is great cinema and great documentary.
This being your debut feature, I know that both of you have, been in the film world for quite some time, but Corinna, it was you who found this story and kind of brought it to Rob, wasn't it? And so kind of what was it about this, did you have other plans? You said, you mentioned their drama. Were you thinking about going down the drama route for that initial feature?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's a good question. I think Rob and I feel that quite strongly, because essentially both of us have a major passion. I mean, I'm speaking for Rob, but I mean, we spend so much time together. I know he agrees. We both have a passion for the cinematic, and the truth is that no one was going to give us the amount of money it costs to make a drama, were they?
No.
and so essentially we've had a friendship for a while. We've met on other jobs where we were looking for something for a while that would allow us the possibility to express ourselves, and we'd erred onto the side of documentary, especially because you'd worked with Nick Broomfield, hadn't you, on
didn't you, when you were associate producer?
I was associate producer on Ghost, which is quite an interesting film to work with in terms of working with Nick Broomfield, because it was kind of his departure from documentary into drama, although drama very much with very much influenced by documentary in terms of their non-actors and the whole way it was constructed. And partly that experience, and I think Corinna, in a sort of parallel way, we sort of began thinking about documentary as a form, and the fact that in many ways it's actually more free and more flexible, in some ways even more creative as a form than drama. You can do things with documentary.
Spontaneously creative.
Yeah.
I mean, creative in a kind of spontaneous way.
That's exactly what I mean. In a spontaneous way, it's kind of more flexible. Obviously, it only works with certain subjects, but you can find real subjects and real people, and you can kind of approach that subject from a dramatic, a drama, a fiction point of view in terms of the way you make it, without necessarily manipulating the reality, but you can approach it in a way that's kind of allows you to...
Well, it's storytelling, isn't it? That's what it is. It's basic storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is that ultimately, if no one's going to give you £500,000 or, 20 odd grand to go away and spend a year writing a script because they don't know who you are, what do you look at? And our greatest gift, I think, the reason Rob and I get on and everything, is the way we think we see the world, the humour we see in everyday life. And in any given moment, the reason we get on and the reason we work really well together is because, put us in front of a new situation or new people, we see the same things to some extent, and we revel in the beauty of them or the horror of them or whatever. And I guess the documentary form, we started to think, well, you know what, put us anywhere, give us a camera, and let's see what we can do, and let's bring to that all of our cinematic ambitions, which essentially are about communication. How do you communicate a story or any truth from one side of a screen to the audience sitting down? And so that's drama in a sense, although it's documentary.
Yeah. So once Corinna had heard about this place, and she came to me and we talked about it, and what
it sounds biblical. Sorry. Sorry, no, because it is for us in the scheme of our
this kind of like
our life,
nirvana. Or
it is somewhat, in terms of our professional life, it was a biblical moment when we decided to make this film in our little small world. Sorry, I find that fun. Go on.
But I think it had a number of things going about it on a practical level, which obviously is the boring kind of, how can I actually find the money to make this film? It's in one place, it happens over 2 weeks, that you can film it really cheaply and you kind of get what you get. But on a deeper level, not only did it sound like there's going to be a lot of interesting people going through a lot of interesting experiences, and if you think about dramatic documentaries, you want interesting characters, you want emotional arcs. It kind of
A
promised
journey.
that kind of thing. We took a gamble that people were going to be going on interesting journeys there.
Well, to be honest, if they weren't going to change after like 2 weeks of walking on fire, naked sweat lodges, shamanic rituals, tantric sex, I mean, then God knows what else will change people, you know?
Yeah, so, you think people going somewhere to really change themselves, immerse themselves in something, go through a change. I mean, that's got to have dramatic potential.
Filming.
And throw that into the forest in Sweden, pretty cinematic.
Summer,
22 hours of sunlight. I mean,
Loads of nudity.
it just all added up, and the fact that people get put into sharing groups and that once a day they sit around in a circle and they share their experiences.
And they don't know each other.
They don't know each other. They're strangers, and this is for a documentary, this is very interesting because normally, you in a documentary, if you don't want to manipulate reality, you're either following character, just following whatever's happening, or you take them to one side and you say, right, I'm going to do a talking heads interview with you, and you ask them
which ultimately is
questions
contrived to some extent.
Because actually you guys didn't want to do that kind of talking head style thing.
No,
well, we tried to avoid it.
And you see a few instances of it in the film, and the reason that it's there, it kind of adds something a little bit different.
But we hardly do it at all, though, to be honest.
No, there's just like one or two instances, and they were very carefully chosen because you get a sort of different kind of reflection from someone when you sit them down for a talking heads interview. But in terms of the sharing groups, what was wonderful is you don't have to interrupt what's happening. People are naturally sharing their experiences with other characters in the film, and you just follow it and you film it.
And I think to add to that is, what's doubly interesting, if I say so myself, is that you not only do you become another person in the group because you're within it, so you get to hear these accounts from these individuals, but you also get to see how the group dynamic evolves. And fundamentally, like as a social animal, you're not just what you get with a one-on-one talking head is the director or producer talking to a character who is aware that they're being talked to, who can compose themselves to some extent. And what we get is, all those things are stripped down. And after 2 weeks of all these workshops, of all this opening up, of all of this sharing, this is what's really happening. It's no bullshit going on. And it's so beautiful because in all of their troubles, in all of their weirdness and all of their eccentricity, and some of them are, in some ways completely bonkers, it's beautiful because they're all so in their truth, and when they talk honestly, they're all so lovely. And we fell in love with them, didn't we? As characters, we did. We think they're great. I mean, they're bonkers, but we're all bonkers. That was what was really special about this film. We did fall in love with their characters, warts and all sort of thing.
The thing quite often with documentary is finding the film within it. You can hope that something's going to happen, you've got an idea that something's going to happen, but ultimately you don't control that. But I'm quite interested in how you guys found the relationship that you have as filmmakers. It's your first feature that you're working together on. How you find the space as to, kind of how you're directing, how you're shaping the film when you're kind of out there.
You mean during the shoot?
Well, during the shoot, kind of even the whole crafting it, back in the edit, the planning of what it is that you want to capture, even those first 4 hours when it was like, well, do we follow group A or group B? Because that's a big gamble, isn't it?
Well, that's good that there's two of us.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, all right, who are we going to follow? Let's hedge your bets.
Exactly,
you go one
true.
way, I'll go the other.
Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, there's the kind of limitations of equipment. So we had 2 cameras, 2 cameramen,
and us.
we had like 2 radio mics, we had a boom mic, and we had the ability to put a mic on one camera. So once we had our characters, we're always in a situation on a daily basis of having to kind of really work out and really tune into who was the most interesting character to really focus on at a particular time, what was going on with each character, and we could then give them the radio mic. But we had to be sort of, with our tiny crew.
You have to be instinctive, though. I mean, it's not just about who's most interesting. It's about who's going through something, who's being most truthful today, ultimately speaking. Because if somebody's like, oh, I'm going to do this today, and one of our characters is the most sort of archetypal hippie, who's the most cliched, and often he wanted us to follow him. And, the times when he asked us to follow him, Rob and I both instinctively were like, we don't want to follow him, because it's all about the show, and it was all about instinct, wasn't
it? Of course,
it?
yeah. I mean, you work out, when it's
not that we persecuted the others,
no,
but you know what I mean. It was,
and also, I mean, there's so many elements to this, because there's also a sort of tactic of, the more you film someone, the more they get used to it, the more they relax, the more truth you get from them. So in a sense, it was kind of a nut shoot, because there was over 20 hours of daylight in a day at that time in Sweden.
And activities throughout the whole of those 20 hours, essentially.
Yeah, so we slept very little. Luckily, we had Joe and Mike